others. And one of the best stories that I still tell about Doug Griffiths is when I was really young, well, really young, 3 years ago. It seems like 100 years. I walked into Doug's office when we were meeting for the first time, and he had a book on his desk, and it was my favorite book from when I was younger, which was Sun Tzu and the Art of War, and he had it sitting on his desk, and I thought, wow, I'm going to really get along with this guy, and I always did. He's just an amazing person. So, Doug, I'd like to welcome you especially to the community. We are so excited to have you here, and we hope that you'll get a good tour as well during your visit. I know there's many of us that are excited about your keynote, so welcome again to Fort McMurray and to Wood Buffalo. Another few facts about Wood Buffalo: we are the largest municipality in North America, so we always boast about that. But as you can imagine, that comes with its own planning challenges that you can't imagine, I guess. Although we have a few people in the room that do imagine it, we have a lot of our planners here. And our deputy CAO is right there, Jamie Doyle. Jamie, stand up and give a big wave. He's a deputy CAO now, but he was in the planning department for what seems like 100 years here. So, 103 years. So, a lot of what you see in this community you can attribute to him, so if you have any questions, be sure to corner him. I'm sure he would enjoy answering all the questions. But we have no problems, as you can imagine, unlike other communities. And I see Jamie like shaking his head now. He doesn't even want to. We have like 1,000 problems a day, I think, that we try to deal with, much like all of you. But please come back again. Don't let the conference wait 10 years till you return to Fort McMurray. We would like to see you back. We certainly enjoy your presence, and we hope that you will return to this community. I know that you're going to have a blessing from Pollyanna at some point, and Pollyanna, we're always excited to have you give a blessing at our events, and it's fantastic. And once again, we are honored to have you on Treaty 8 and unceded Métis territory. So welcome again. Have a great conference, everybody. We hope you have a great tour of the community and that you enjoy the lovely facilities here. And we'll see you again, hopefully not 10 years from now. And Doug, welcome back again. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. And welcome to the 2019 Alberta Professional Planners Institute Conference. My name is Mac Hickley. I'm the president of APPI, and it's my pleasure and honor to open this conference formally. And on behalf of APPI Council and the Institute, I'd just like to welcome you to Celebrate Strength here with us in all our sessions that have been planned for you this weekend, or this week. So our conference committee has been doing an amazing job lining up speakers and sessions, co-chaired by Haley Waslicia and Nabil Malik down here. And I'd like to thank them for their amazing work, and as well as the other committee members, Stephen Yu, Stephen Rates, Jennifer Wardle, Jared Candlish, Kendra Raymond, Jordan Zukowski, Pretty Gruelson, Heather Chisholm, Natasha DeSandy, and Sarah Burkew. Just give that group a hand for a moment. Thanks. There's also a few dignitaries from the APPI sector that I'd like to mention, and if you could just stand up or wave your hand momentarily when I call your name. Councillors Aaron O'Neill, past president. Kate Van Frassen. Chelsea Whitty. Gary Wilson. Glynis, where are you, Gary? Glynis Buffalo. Bernice Gonzalez. And Amanda Bree Watson. Also here today is the president of the Canadian Institute of Planners, Eleanor Mohammed. And now one more introduction. I'm pleased to call Elder Pollyanna McBain to welcome all of you conference delegates and acknowledge our presence here on Treaty 8 land. Elder Pollyanna. Elder Pollyanna McBain is a Micmac woman from the Eel River Bar First Nation in New Brunswick. She's a cultural navigator for the First Nation Métis and Inuit education program for the Fort McMurray Public School Division, as well as a worker for the Nistawayu Friendship Center. Pollyanna has been here since 2014 and has created strong connections across the Wood Buffalo region with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. And we're honored and thrilled to have her here with us today to share her extensive Indigenous knowledge, teachings, storytelling, and wisdom.
Kwe, Walesikko. That's hello and good morning in Mi'kmaq. I too am a visitor here in Treaty 8 and it's quite an honor to be here. It's been very kind to me. I come from the province of New Brunswick where we had something similar to what you have today. It's called Jedi. I was a Jedi princess. I was there when it was born. It was called Joint Economic Development Initiative, where we were First Nations. We had a tripartite process. And at the chairs were a federal, provincial, and First Nations chair. And they chaired the meetings on planning, on community development, like yourselves today. So being a part of JEDI and working for Indian Northern Affairs Canada at the time in employment equity, it was nice to see the federal and provincial governments at the table, as well as private and public sector. Because when you planned,
introducing her, right? Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm just going to bring your attention up to the front here as we get started with this morning's plenary session. We hope you're enjoying the conference so far and still have a little bit of energy left to make it through the rest of today. Before we get started, we just want to acknowledge our 2 platinum sponsors of the APPI conference once again. So a round of applause, please, for the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo and the City of Calgary. And once again, a big thank you as well to our gold sponsors, Stantec, the City of Edmonton, and Urban Systems. Thank you. I'm now going to invite Nabil to introduce our closing plenary speaker, who is Zoe Roy, with us today.
As Haley said, I would like to introduce you to our closing plenary keynote presenter, Zoe Roy, activating our humanity for a brighter community. We are excited to have Zoe here with us today. Zoe is a spoken word poet, community-based educator, community engagement consultant, author, filmmaker, activist, and social entrepreneur based out of Saskatoon. She is a connector and has a passion for building community. Zoe is passionate about enabling people to reach their potential by eliminating barriers. Her Cree Dene Métis roots and career as an artist working with Indigenous and Canadian youth give her a unique insight into working and building relationships between different groups. Please join me in welcoming Zoe and prepare to learn about how relationship building can strengthen our communities at home here in Alberta.
I read some of your poems, so I know that all of you are writing poems. So today what we're going to do is we're going to write a song together. And even if you're like, oh, I don't like rap, or any excuse that you can possibly come up with, we're still going to do it because you're still going to learn skills that can be translated into other forms of writing, okay? My name is Zoe Roy. I'm Cree Dene Métis, a member of Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation. I'm a poet and a community-based educator based out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I write poetry to send a message to the world, perhaps as a way to unify people, for people to see different perspectives of how the world works, recognizing that our voice might not be the most important one, but how our voices can unify to be better for everyone.
And I'll stand with you and pray and struggle and bleed. They tried so hard to bury us, they didn't know that we are seeds. They tried to take our language, and here we speak peace.
Like all 13-year-olds, I had all of the answers, and my parents did not. So with all the pride in the world, I ran away from home. And within a week, I found myself incarcerated. I was left with only myself, and I had to reflect on the life that I wanted to lead and who I wanted to be. And that was really where I found music and poetry. On the streets, it felt like a lot of Indigenous people were impoverished. It felt like it wasn't a coincidence that we didn't have agency in our own voice. It didn't seem like a coincidence that so many people who were non-Indigenous had so much decision-making power over our lives. And I really thought that there was more to life than that. It hurt my feelings that I had to write this, but we kind of have to go there because we're talking about racism, right? We can't talk about anti-racism without talking about racism, right? Maybe have you or someone you know or care about ever been bullied? Yeah? If we do not address the bully, we will not change the problem. I teach all children that they matter, that they're important, that they belong, because that's what I've been taught by my mentors. That's what matters. If we believe that we matter, that we're important, that we belong, what can we do with our life is endless. And that's why I share their voice. And what kind of actions can we take to make sure that everyone's treated well? I like how you said about simple things. 5, 6, 7, 8. Racism is real and it happens in the world. It comes and it takes
the boys and the girls.
Throughout the last 7 years, my audience has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and that shows me that the message of hope and the importance of voice is becoming that much larger as well.
We have leaders like that right here with us now. Leaders like Zoe Roy. Zoe reinvented her own life and has been transforming the lives of other people ever since, and challenging those around her, including her leaders.
We will take us.
The students talked about how simple things are the answer. You can do simple things, I can do simple things, let's all do simple things. And then we don't put all of the pressure on ourselves. We can share the burden, and thus making our communities and the world a better place for everyone.
Hello, hello, hello. Hi. In Cree, you say tanse. Can you say tanse? That's as much as I know. Just kidding. Just kidding. I know somewhere. So yes, I'm Zoe Roy. You heard all the things. I wanted to share this video because so many people asked me, like, how did you get to where you are? And I don't know. Today I just jumped on a plane and now I'm here. I'm actually based in Toronto now. And I guess what I didn't talk about in any of that is that I've been going to school for a long time. So I got an undergrad. I just need to talk about this for a minute to legitimize myself. Just kidding. So I did an undergrad in Indigenous education. I'm more focused on anti-racist and anti-oppressive education. And then I went and taught grade 8 in a land-based, community-based education program. But my kids stood with Standing Rock, and they were grade 8s, and they were predominantly white, predominantly well-off, benefited from Canadian systems. Those are the people that we need on our side, and to care about the environment and stuff like that. So anyway, they stood with Standing Rock, they wrote speeches, and then we went to City Hall and just invited people to come and listen to our speeches. And then the paper called me a left-wing extremist who's indoctrinating my students. So I put that on my resume and decided that wasn't the school board for me. Then I went and got a master's of public policy because I was like, surely this is a mess. And I was thinking that if people benefit from if there's a group of people that benefit from a policy that other people are burdened by, then that's inherently an oppressive policy, and then we're walking around thinking that we're the problem. But meanwhile, we're just riddled with bad policies. And so now I'm on a mission to dissect and pull apart and rebuild policies. Dismantle bad policies, believe in the people. I think that, and that's largely what I'm going to talk about today. So I went and got a master's of public policy. I was looking at the role of discretion amongst probation officers and Indigenous youth recidivism rates, because I still had a chip on my shoulder from going to jail. And so when I was a kid, I was incarcerated 28 times. And the first one was for joyriding. I was mad at my parents for not believing me for something that happened, traumatizing. And then I told my parents, oh, my heart's broken. And they were like, oh, suck it up, basically, right? They probably would disagree with that tone. But anyway, I went joyriding with my friend on Christmas Eve, running away from home, 13, have all the answers. You remember that. So, yeah, but because then I was homeless and poor and a Native girl in an inner city, it was very easy. It was much easier to put me in jail than it was to put me into any other system. And so then I was like, this isn't a coincidence. And I've always prided myself on being a rebel. So I thought after 28 times, if I'm truly going to be a rebel, then I'm going to rebel into success because this system was built for me. And so I'm just going to go over here. And that's what I did. I continued making art and music and traveling around, super broke, super poor, always volunteering, 5-to-1 kind of method, always putting myself out there again and again and again, just like I am right now. But I've practiced, you see. I had nothing to lose. And when you have nothing to lose, you have everything to gain. And I think that's what our communities are filled with, bright-eyed children who just kind of want to know where they belong. And it's not so complicated. We were once those children. But sometimes some of these children walk around, by the time they're 15, they've already developed these messages that, they belong over here. And it happens in our daily routines, like whether or not you're allowed to go on the basketball team. Well, what if you don't have shorts? And well, my mom can't afford shorts, and then they've already developed all these messages that they don't belong on the basketball team. It would be too much work to be on the basketball team, so I just won't. And then you have a bunch of kids walking around 3 to 6 p.m., getting into trouble, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today, too. So we develop these messages, we internalize this oppression, and then we just believe that we don't belong. So I wanted to look at how bad policies inform children that they don't belong. So then I was like, well, policy's kind of the last one to dinner. And I was like, oh, maybe we got to figure something else out. And then I was like, oh, well, education is a place that we go and receive messages. We go and learn, and we receive these messages. We learn about our place, we learn about who we are, we learn about history, but every single teacher has an agenda. Teaching and learning is inherently political. So I was like, well, yeah, I feel like teaching and learning is highly informed by Canadian, philosophies that might not represent Canada as we know it now. Education was actually created by 10 men in 1818 or something like that. And education as we know it is the same, how we silo like social studies and science and math. And that whole experience of siloing education is still the same, but doesn't really reflect Canadian values or the way that we live our lives. And I am really thinking that there's a new way that we can experience education. So I am now doing a PhD in education. It's called kinship-based education. That's what I'm doing. And I'm trying to build the framework for a pedagogical system that puts the child in community so that they're not going to school for hours and then going home for hours and then going here for hours, like that there's some fluidity within the child's experience of the community. Because I'm convinced that these messages that we receive, that we become informed about what our place is in community. One time I was working with some kids in northern Saskatchewan. We had a government a few years ago that didn't favor social programs and cut everything. That these kids depended on these social programs. And I was like, don't depend on social programs. They're dangerous, right? They completely go against our values of self-regulation, because what you're doing is you're making people excited and then you're letting them down. Well, the people who get excited and get let down are usually the same people, because these social programs are really built on they're like programs and services, so they're like affirmative action type of efforts. They're not sustainable, and so I'm trying to find something sustainable, and I'm sure that's what you're here to do too. So I asked the kids, what do you know about your community? And they talked about the people that they go to for help, or the people that they go to learn from. They talked about the places that they go. And then they talked about the things that they go and acquire from these people and the places. And so when I'm looking at the fabric of a community, I'm looking at the places, the people, and the resources. And all of us experience our communities with some sort of routine. And we're a part of these different places that we go in relationship with these different people And we have things to offer and things that we get from these different people and places. We're no different from these children. The thing is that when there's a have and have not kind of scenario going on, the messages that you get from a position of a have not is that you don't go to the places that have. And if you do, you're not positioned as a have. You're positioned as someone who accesses services. And I know this. Maybe not in 2019, know this. Because when I was accessing services, that was 15 years ago. And I had to identify the places that I went so that I could be well. If I needed to go to the doctor, there was a health bus. If I needed to go to the dentist, then I knew that healthcare was like free or whatever, so I could, as a child, so I could go to the dentist. If I needed to print off resumes so I can get a job, if I needed help getting a job, I had to find all of these things. And even though I didn't have people to show me these places, I did eventually be able to find out where these places were. And this was very essential in me feeling like I had a foundation, that I could have some autonomy in my life. And the thing is that at the time, I was dealing with the implications of being Indigenous without actually knowing what Indigenous meant, or being Indigenous in an urban setting. I felt like I was the problem. And I realize now that this isn't a coincidence. And so what I really want to talk about is not about my experience at all. That's as much as I'm going to go into that. I want to talk about what are the conditions that we're creating within community for people to thrive. Because if our communities are riddled with multi-layered policies that benefit some people and burden others, even if it's complacent, even if it's kind, racism is often very kind, and then we have these words like racism and white supremacy and all these words that we're just like cocoon when we hear them, they're not talking about us. But they are. We are right now. We're talking about all of us because racism is a social condition. We're just conditioned. Just because we're good people doesn't mean that we were taught by good systems. Doesn't mean that we were taught only good things. One time my supervisor told me there's nothing more boring than a finished puzzle. And that makes me feel good. Like when I feel like I'm failing or I feel like I'm not doing a good job, I always accept that I'm still learning. I'm still learning. Being racist doesn't make us bad people. But having the privilege to be complacent in our lack of critical thought or critical analysis, well, that's a problem. And we do it all the time. We just walk around so acquiescently that's just the way it is. But that's not the way it has to be. These policies, these systems, this country was built by people no greater than us. That we can also, as a country, recognize that we're still learning. And as for people who are new to Canada or people who are new to mainstream Canada, whatever the situation is, I think all trauma is relative and all trauma is real. But there comes a point where you can legitimize positioning yourself as a victim, but never will you reach your potential if you always position yourself as a victim. Just because you can position yourself as a victim doesn't really give you the right to be rude or complacent or attacky all the time. I think we all have a responsibility and obligation to create better conditions for all our children to thrive. We all want the future to be a better place for everyone. So I wanted to know, instead of just jumping into your conference and be like, these are the things that I know, I wanted to know what did you guys do at the conference? Tell me things that you learned. How do you do that then? Listening to your neighbor. Okay, hold on. Here, let me. Coming to you. This jacket is so hot. It's really hot. But it's so cute though.
Trying to work with our neighbors and approaching it with humility and wanting to understand and a curiosity to understand.
You want to know how to say humility in Cree? Tapateamuin. Tapateamuin. Can you say that? Tapateamuin. Hey, good work. Okay, tell me what else you learned. Don't do me like this. Yeah.
In one of the sessions, we learned that we always focus on product as an end goal, and really we should really be focusing on process. Because if we get the process right, especially when we're talking with our Indigenous communities and First Nation, Métis, and Inuit groups, the process is often more important than the product, and the product will just fall in place.
Yeah. I think that really goes along with like nothing more boring than a finished puzzle. Like, we're still here. Like, we're super here. We're like not going anywhere at all. They tried so hard. Like that line said, they tried so hard to bury us, but they didn't know that we are seeds. We are growing. If we were dead, we would have been dead by now. We're like growing huge. And we're the same. Like look, I have a microphone. Like we're doing okay. And I think it's really good and exciting that we can work together. And like, Indigenous is not synonymous with poor. It's really not. Those are all social constructions. Who we view as positive in our society is all informed by this beautiful little education system. Who we value as important, who we value as knowing, who we value as underprivileged, who we position as criminal. Why are we so okay with so many Indigenous children in like care? And what people, places, and resources are available for children living in such abnormal and precarious environments? This is a real Canadian dilemma. And I really hope that we can find a way to create the conditions for all children to thrive. Because if we are not creating the conditions for all children to thrive, we're never going to realize the potential of Canada. Well, that sucks. I really want to know what our potential is. Thanks, a little ego stroke. I know I'm so imperfect, but so are you. Okay, so tell me what else. Tell me what else you learned. Tell me things.
So I learned that planners are very similar to engineers. And you guys dress the same as us, too. But the struggles that I've heard a lot about the Municipalities Act and the struggles that you have with the legislation that you work in. And it's the same with the legislation that engineers work in, and we all are constrained then by a number of organizations that do regulation and bylaws and things like that. But there is a willingness, like I feel that in this conference, a willingness to work collaboratively, to find shared vision, to move projects forward, and work in that gray space where we can flex. So I learned to have an appreciation for the struggles that you folks have as planners too.
Good, thank you so much. Anyone else? Yeah, I just want to say real quick about this, that it's not like like colonialism or like colonial agendas obviously are not just like perpetuated or created by white people. Like it's a way of thinking. It's a way of being, and I think that like this what you said is really poignant to this point of like neocolonialism is also really essential to understand and like pick apart in this conversation, because like I said, we are all taught by this colonial system, and just because we think this way or feel this way doesn't make us bad people. But it's really important to critically analyze what you said, the laws, policies, the bylaws, the practices, the procedures, because it's policy design, but also policy implementation, about how we go about our roles. The people on the front lines, not just the decision makers, but the people on the front lines, the ones who are just doing their job, it could be really dangerous because we all are conditioned to have certain beliefs about where we're positioned in the society. That's so essential. Thanks so much for that point.
Hi. I loved the session yesterday about change, and that change is coming. I thought that was an amazing thought, and the way it was brought up, right from the way technology is changing, the way people thinking is changing, the way people are making choices is changing. And then in the afternoon, I was very excited about Nancy's session on environmental management plans, as to how, as municipalities, we are willing to revisit what our priorities were maybe 10 years ago. And we are willing to welcome change going forward. And then today's session continued the theme. I thought it was a very nice coincidence going into the session this morning for conservation and heritage management. The same thing. We were looking at heritage differently back in the day, in the 1970s, for example. But now, as we go forward, we are digging deeper, we are reflecting more, and we are looking forward to how that's going. So I thought, for me, one of the very interesting things to learn about was how welcoming we all are as a group to change.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, okay, so I'm just gonna reflect on that too. I think that some people are under the impression that this change is making some people lose power. Like, you ever hear like, oh, they're taking our jobs. Like, this is a situation of binarism, it's called. And so just like, there's not like a total amount of power, as if like you're gonna take power here and give it here. It's kind of ridiculous if you think about it. But people think like this, and these are legitimized thoughts, and it's complacent, it comes from people in power, but like, when we're talking about change, this is a really good point, because like if we're comfortable with change, are we comfortable with redistributions of power? And what does that mean in terms of wins and losses? And that's, capitalism is really all about wins and losses. Talking about capitalism, I'm gonna, you're killing me. Okay, I'll teach you how to say respect in Cree, okay? Manachituin. Say it, Manachituin. Now turn your ch into ts. Manachituin. Hey, good work. Okay, that's respect. Who else can tell me what else you learned? Cool.
We talked a lot, especially earlier in the conference, about economic development and attracting and retaining people in our communities. As planners, we always talk about planning for all life cycles and trying to incorporate all people. And I think that just, especially being in rural Alberta in a smaller urban center, focusing again on those aspects of actual community, of why people would want to move and stay in our community.
Yeah. That's cool. That when I was a kid, I used to go to the old folks' home and read books. What we did is we listened to the elders, people speak, and we wrote about them, and then we wrote a poem about them and gave it back, and it was a good exercise in empathy. And I really liked that. I started to gain quite an affinity for the elders in the community. Because I went joyriding, I felt bad, and I was like, oh no, I ruined someone's Christmas. I really sat like that. I'm actually a really soft person. And then I was like, oh, how do I give back to the community? And then I started shoveling people's walkways, and they called me the local snow angel. I like that. Recently, what I was going to say. Okay, I just want to tell you one more story. Lately, I've been living in Ontario, and I go to Kingston every month for moon ceremonies. So, I'm on Anishinaabe territory. I'm Cree Dene Métis from northern Saskatchewan, and our ceremonies are different from Anishinaabe ceremonies. And so now I'm also, I kind of feel like a settler. I mean, as much as I could. But anyway, I've been going to these ceremonies, and you know where they happen? They happen at the old folks' home. And so you do, intertribal dances, round dances with people in wheelchairs. So cute. You know, these old white people so excited to powwow. They're so down, having the best time. And this is really great because these are just all exercises in empathy. For my family is very pulled apart and don't talk to each other, and intergenerational trauma does that, right? I'm sure they're all good people, we just don't talk to each other. And so that longing for intergenerational connection is so raw and real in my life, and so that's probably why I gain an affinity with elders, but creating opportunity for people to communicate and be in community, it could be really fun, it could be really fun. That's why I wanted this session to be fun. It's I don't know, we could walk around and be all but that really feeds into capitalism of absolute truth and stuff like that. We're also humans. We're not our jobs. You guys are probably paid to be here. Yeah? Yeah? Me too. It's not a tough life, is it? Someone fed you this morning? Yeah? You're going to catch a plane or something later? It's not bad, not bad. So there's nothing to be rigid about. You're not going to lose power. You're already here. So we might as well have a good time. We might as well share in our eccentric traits and really understand what our potential is. And it's not about all the way up, but it's really about I feel there's movement, and I feel there's a lot to us that we have yet to tap into. Okay, so where do we go from here? Does anyone else want to tell me what they learned? Yeah? Okay, here we go.
So something you said earlier when you started really resonates with me and in relationship to what we're learning, and you talked about breaking down those silos. And I think, in a sense, that's what we're learning. We need to stop being pigeonholed into a spot, and we need to learn to communicate with everybody at their level. And as others have said, we're building a community, so let's do it as a one and not in silos separate from each other.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a really good point. And that really goes to the point of we're all paid. The people who we expect to engage in the conversations, to build community, we all have different dimensions of power within the community. And so if we're truly going to be equitable about the process of community engagement, then we have to be mindful about who's being paid and who's not, because there's ways that we can go above and beyond. I just don't know how to do that yet. I'm sure every community is different, but food is a really good way to bring people together. And there's opportunities like that for communities to happen. But I think one thing that I would say about that is, in my experience, consistency has been like the most important part. So food and consistency. We'll meet back next year. See how it goes. Okay, can anyone else tell me things that they learned? This is good. I might not be back here next year, but you guys can continue to check in. Unless, just kidding.
I think I just wanted to say or give a shout out to Eleanor's talk yesterday, or her contribution on the panel yesterday afternoon. And I think what Eleanor told us about and demonstrated and modeled for all of us ties in a lot to what you're forcing us to open up to this morning, which is good. Well, forcing's important. And that's to be vulnerable and open and honest with ourselves in whatever work that we're doing, whether it's on heritage stuff, on environmental plans. We're all humans, and in some way, no matter what work you do as a human, you're working with other humans. And in order to do any work with humans, you have to look after your own humanity.
Well, this book is writing itself. Thank you. Do you want to know how to say honesty in Cree? Okay, tapwe tatoen. Tapwe tatoen. And that's different from humility. What's humility again? Just kidding. Tapatemoen. And respect is manatitoen. I'm going to teach you one more while we're here. Love is sakitoen. Yeah, not bad, not bad. Okay, so I have a feeling that the clock, yep, all the time for you.
Just a real simple thing. We have to build up others to build up community.
So how do we do that?
What we've learned at the conference here, and just practice it in our daily lives.
Yeah, totally. Like awarding power and privilege. As an Indigenous woman, like growing up in this society, I was told a long time ago, you're not going to have power. You don't make law or order. What I do have is privilege. I mean, I do have prestige. I have influence and prestige. And I think that's good enough for me. But I have the influence to make people feel good about themselves. I have the influence to motivate people to just apply for school. You might as well. You're like, what do you have to lose? These kind of things, right? Like, we can influence each other in really, really simple ways, and maybe that's how we build each other up. I mean, I did have a script here. Let me just check it out. Well, I wanted to actually do this. I wanted to know, where do we take it from here? I do want to know that. Does anyone have any recommendations for the floor? That's what I'm here for? Okay, here's my man.
I've been reflecting a lot on the theme of the conference, which is so lame to say, but I think there's something to draw out of it, which is celebrate strength. And earlier in the week, I was able to present a session on something that was just kind of goofy, just a goofy idea, but just to receive so much honest and like positive feedback on it made me realize that that larger theme of celebrate strength is apparent and evident in how everyone treated me and how we have been treating each other afterwards by building each other up and celebrating each other, and realizing that all of us are probably here right now because we have been celebrated, and so how far can we bring along others if we celebrate them and what they bring to the community is, I think, good energy to bring back into our day-to-day work.
Okay. I feel like that takes a lot of courage. And like totally doable though, right? Like those are simple, that's what we're gonna take back to our community, is finding opportunities to celebrate strength. Celebrate strength. Do you wanna know how to say courage in Cree? So kiamuin. Let me just finish these Cree words for you. I got 2 more and I just wanna make sure that I get them. Okay, so, wisdom is ianisuin. And And then, that's not one of them. I'm trying to do the 7 teachings here. Okay, love is sakituin. Respect is manatsituin. Humility is tapatemuin. Honesty is tapoitatuin. Oh, truth is tapuewin. Wisdom is ianisuin. And courage is sokiamuin. These are the 7 teachings. As you can see, they all end in win. So everyone wins. And capitalism likes to win. But with the 7 teachings, you actually don't need to step over each other. There is no argument of binarism within the 7 teachings. And so through the practice of these 7 teachings, you don't even have to tell anybody where you're at with your learning of the 7 teachings. You could just keep it with you all the time. It'll always be there for you, will never betray you, and you can consistently work towards becoming a better version of yourself every single day. It really speaks to our integrity. And we need integrity to build a stronger community. I really wanted to share those 7 teachings with you. One of the most important things that I wanted to bring to the floor today is that I would not be able to be here in front of you, feeling safe in my own voice, in my own body. Even though I'm forced to be vulnerable, I'm asking you to share the brunt of uncomfortableness. And that's really what this is going to take moving forward. Do you remember when you were, 14 and growing? And your knees hurt all the time? Or whatever, you get the point. These are just growing pains. And all we're saying is that we need to share in that uncomfortable nature of growth. All growth is uncomfortable. You never grow when you're just chilling. You always grow when you're uncomfortable. And so what we can do as planners, as people who have influence in how policies are designed and implemented within community, we can be more mindful about the change that is required for our communities to grow, where everyone can reach their potential. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And even though I grew up in a very imperfect community, I am raised by community. And it's not that my parents didn't love me. My parents love me. And I know that. But they were also given messages by this colonial state that positioned them where they were. And I was raised by that positioning. I needed community in order to understand what my potential was. I needed community to know what my gifts were, what my boundaries were. I needed community to love me, to care about me, to give me strength so that I know what I could be. And so I think that's also what it takes to build a brighter future. I went and did some research on urban planning and was like, they already know all this stuff. So culturally appropriate practices, standards, and ethics. I was like, I'm just going to write down a bunch of fancy words. One thing that I thought was cool was that the makings of our city and towns are colonial, but the DNA in the land is not. This land that built these buildings, they know the truth. And that's okay. We're not done the making of Canada. We're just jumping in. And so I think our egos want us to be like, okay, let's wrap it up. This is it. We did it. But we're always in a constant battle between ego and self-esteem. Our self-esteem might rely on the completion of something to feel like we're adequate enough to complete something. But if we can just take a step back and realize that the process is enough, that we're giving enough day in, day out, then that speaks to our integrity. I thought that was cool. What else did I say? I have like a video that I want to show you, so I need to wrap this up. I'm like, Canada is doing great. I was like, this is an urban planning conference. I have to write notes. But I'm like, this morning I was like, I don't write notes. And I was like, oh, this is like reconciliation, where you guys have to reconcile that I don't have a PowerPoint. I thought that was good. So basically, I just want you to design more places for people to gather, not places that are built on deficits, that social constructions are designed by us, they're perpetuated by us. We have the power to change these social constructions by redistributing power, by including people of diversity on your boards, committees, any decision-making capacity, any positions of implementing mandates. But people who do not design the policy, do not understand how ingrained colonialism is, well, how ironic to say, but how colonialism is ingrained in Canada. Some people just don't understand how connected that is. It's very muddled, and we do have to do the muddling to get through it. But what I'm saying is that we can't just have people of color on the front lines implementing the policies, because people who are just doing their job are just doing their job because they depend on it. Their lives depend on it. And so it's really rude and disrespectful, I feel, to just position people of color on the front lines where they're not positioned in decision-making power, like in decision-making roles. We're going to shoot ourselves in the foot if we continue to do that. Oh, Indigenous autonomy doesn't make our societies divided. Oh, this is probably good. So like co-creating new systems means that we have to critically analyze sites of discriminatory policies so that we don't reinvent this system where some people are burdened by policies where other people are benefiting from, and then racism doesn't make you a bad person. So Christianity is what informs the makings of Canada. This is what legitimizes these laws, practices, and policies. This is not what Canada is, and I'm convinced that we have the power, we have the prestige, we have the influence to create a Canada where everybody can thrive. I want to show you a video. It's called a Cookum Rap. There's going to be 4 women. There's Maria Campbell, Louise Half, Rita Bouvier, and my mom, Maxine Roy. They have agreed to write a rap song with me. We did this because these women, you can find them in the museum, the Canadian Museum of People, whatever, that important people, except my mom. And so I was playing on this thing of all women are notable. That's why I wanted my mom to be a part of this. What these women are saying is that even though hip-hop is a language that young people are speaking, it is not disregarded by the elders, that the elders want the young people to speak in whatever way they need to in order to understand who they are as people, and so that they can get a grasp of their footing, they can get a grasp of who they are and footing in this society. That's what I meant to say. And that they can continue to discover who they are and what their position is in society. They talk about how hip-hop music is not the first rebel music, that it used to be taboo to thrust your hips And Elvis Presley thrust his hips, and some people enjoyed it, some people didn't. Hank Williams was emotional. He cried, and that was taboo at the time because men were not supposed to cry. And there's an evolution of music. There's storytelling that's infused within these narratives of music and song. And that's what these women were speaking to. They say, listen to the children, dance with them, move your body with them. They're telling you who they are. And I am convinced that all children are just as important as us, that adults are just as important as children, and that we become socially conditioned to believe we're a certain way, suppressing our inner child, and we wonder why we have so many mental and emotional ailments. So I'm going to share this song with you, and then I'm going to promote some things and finish up.
Muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan, muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan. We could swing our hips and roll our joints, we could grease our knees and flip our hair, we could pucker our lips and make Yuki squeal. Kokums aren't afraid of being the biggest squeal. Muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan, muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan.
Kayasmanan, Mozartanan, Hank Williams, Nicky Moskumkunan. The moon just went behind the clouds. I'm so lonesome I could cry.
When we rock and rolled with Elvis, we owned ourselves.
We owned ourselves.
Muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan. Muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan.
We never screamed, shut the music off, cause we hear your message and we like your beat. And now you dance to the beat of the drum.
Muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan. Muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan.
Nuhkumak, nimushumak, kahkiyaw na wahkumaganak. Osikuk, kweahuk, kweahuk, kweahuk. On with the music and pick up the beat. Dance, nimikuk, on your feet. On with the music and pick up the beat. Dance, nimikuk, on your feet.
Muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan. Muy ninan, igustenan, muy ninan, sexenan.
Can you please give them a round of applause? Oh, that's me. Isn't that fun? I think, yes, it's uncomfortable, but it can be fun. I feel that way about education, too. I feel like my joy is resistance, that it's really hard to push over a happy person. And I think that, when I was able to position, even though I'm able to position myself as a victim in this society, I felt like this anger was so heavy. It's like these chips on my shoulder were so heavy. And the more that I spoke and the more that I shared, the more I was able to identify that maybe, the more that I was able to see that it doesn't all have to be like this. The more that I shared, the more that I spoke, the more that I listened, the more I healed. And these burdens, these chips on my shoulders slowly started to fall off. And I realized now I am free. I am free in myself. I am safe in my body. But it took community to give me these spaces where I can constantly come back. Because sometimes we trick ourselves into believing that we're not good enough, huh? And same. I'm going to leave you with one poem, and then that's it. Hey, I get it. I'm still young, but I've been trying real hard to understand the world and how to play my part, how to make my dreams come true, and establish my own worldview. So I've been collecting these stories within me, and they've been telling me like enlightened energy that I'm beginning to shine. And I realize through self-talk that I can be my biggest motivator. I just need myself to load my savior when I'm acting up on my worst behavior, when I'm stuck in my head or sunk in my stomach, when I'm afraid of losing this luck and imposter syndrome, when I'm afraid of making it or I'm afraid that I won't, when I'm afraid to let you all down and I'll be up here all alone. But I tell the kids to do it anyway, because we all carry that distress. That bravery doesn't make us any more and fear doesn't make us any less. It's just a matter of pushing through. And in turn, they show me how to be curious of all that's new. And so I repeat this in the mirror, as if I'm one of the children who show me their bravery and arose with sheer willingness. And I'm reminded that it's okay to be wrong. That you don't need to be the melody to be a part of making songs. That you don't need to be the accountant to be the business. And that it's okay to make mistakes. Just always ask for forgiveness. That relationships are aplenty because we all need a lot. And that there's always people near you who would love what you got. And that no one is self-made. And we go nowhere with self-hate. And it's so funny how gratitude comes into play when I don't allow fear to win, but I learn how to carry it while lacking grace. And so I just come out here on this stage with all of my imperfections in tow, because this is what keeps me alive and gives my blood that healthy flow and this cute DNA glow. But when it's time to get up and go, I can't be the only one that's challenged, the one mustering up the hope to weave through the daily ropes, and I'm handling it because I know that my inner child will always stay low to catch me when I can no longer stay afloat. And these children remind me that I've always been my own answer. All I have to do is answer. My name is Zoe Roy. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. A book. A book. Buy them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Zoe, for coming here today, sharing your stories, your teaching with us. For that, just that incredibly inspiring presentation. Thank you so much. Round of applause for Zoe. Thank you. We'd now like to just take a few minutes to say thank you once again to all the delegates, the speakers, the sponsors, our incredible APPI conference committee. Thank you everybody who took part in making this conference happen. We'd also like to thank Shell Place for their amazing hospitality. It's been a great conference, and we hope you found it to have some valuable ideas, both big and small, to take back with you. At this time, we would also like to invite APPI President Mac Hickley to the stage to share what is in store for everybody for 2020.
Thanks again, Haley and Nabil, for organizing this conference. Wasn't it a good one? And thanks again, Zoe, for that great presentation. And don't worry, she'll be back this afternoon for more if you can stay. On behalf of APPI, I'd now like to invite you to join us again next year in Lethbridge in 2020. The conference co-chairs are going to be Tyson Boylan and Spencer Croyle, who are already working on developing a program that's going to be exciting and innovative and interesting. And they're working with the theme Beyond Success. And there's a video. So that looks good, doesn't it? Yeah, so join us next year. We're looking at dates in September, maybe the 20th to 22nd or the 7th to 9th. Hopefully a little warmer than October, better for some outdoor trips to see some of the great places in Lethbridge. I know the City of Lethbridge is doing some interesting Indigenous planning work too at the moment, so hopefully we'll get some more messages in that vein when we're there. And also in collaboration with the University of Lethbridge. So for those of you staying with us for the afternoon session with Zoe, The Truth of Reconciliation, that workshop will run from 1 o'clock to 3:30 here, and lunch will be provided. For all the rest of you, safe travels, and hope to see you in Lethbridge next year. Thanks very much.